Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. The fallout from an averted pilot strike.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It's just part of the process, right?
WestJet and its pilots come to a deal, but canceled flights leave hundreds of passengers in the lurch. Plus, choking on poor air quality.
You can see how ridiculously smoky it is.
Wildfire smoke bears down on residents in Fort St. John as the risk of lightning looms this weekend. And pitching tourism to pooch owners.
I think tourism needs to be a little creative these days.
Why an entrepreneur in 100 Mile House thinks dog strollers is the way to more tourism.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Lien Yeung. Anita is away tonight. Passengers traveling with WestJet over the long weekend can breathe a collective sigh of relief. The company reached a tentative deal with a union representing its pilots late last night, narrowly avoiding a strike. But in the days leading up to the deal, WestJet and its subsidiary Swoop canceled over 100 flights, creating a backlog of stranded passengers. And those traveling within BC can also expect delays as BC Ferries gears up for a hectic weekend. And for more on how passengers have been affected, our Zara Premji joins us now live from Tsawwassen Ferry Terminal. So, Zara, what have you been hearing from passengers today?
Well, Leanne, first off, I'm going to tell you it is very hot out here. And so, yes, these unseasonable temperatures so far have all the passengers waiting in balmy temperatures, roasting in their vehicles. But they said the fact that the WestJet pilot strike was still looming made them feel like it might have been a safer bet to take the ferry. So that's what they did.
Yeah, that was a bit touch and go.
Crisis averted, but not all problems resolved.
It wasn't really instant relief because we woke up this morning at 6 o'clock and our flight got moved to tomorrow. And I thought, man, we were like, it was all confirmed. Now they're obviously trying to get people from yesterday's flights onto today's flights, and then we got pushed to tomorrow. So that was a little frustrating.
WestJet pilots are expected to officially accept the new deal with their employer early next week. At issue were pay and scheduling concerns. And the minute that tentative deal was reached, these travelers knew they had to do everything in their power to get back to Calgary for something special.
Yep, my mom's 60th, but don't tell her. It's a big secret.
For others, it was sweet relief because patience and faith were wearing thin.
It's been an exciting couple of hours. Yeah, we've got here very early. I'm not going to lie.
1 lane to your left. Thank you. For some travelers, they knew the ferries would be a balmy wait too, but they felt it was a safer bet, weighing out the what-ifs around strike action.
I was actually going to fly, and I was like, oh, I might as well drive. And then I saw on their website that they might go on strike, and I was like, well, I better not play around with that.
And if it's not a ferry or plane as your long weekend mode of transportation, Drive BC and the RCMP's Highway Patrol are also anticipating busy roads around the province. But really, whatever your mode of transportation, some advice from a fellow traveler.
If everybody is thinking the exact same thing, then we're gonna be stuck no matter what. So I guess you just have to enjoy the time spent waiting for things.
All right, Leanne, I'm not sure if for you have any recollection of this, but I do not remember a May long being this hot in a long, long time, which means now if you're heading to the ferries, be prepared to bask in the heat. If you're heading to the airport, be prepared to wait. Of course, as we know, WestJet delays still taking place. And if you're heading out on the road, prepare to be on there for a while. Basically, patience all throughout, Leanne.
Patience all around for sure, Zara, and I can just see the sun beaming down on those cars behind you. So with the increased number of travelers over the long weekend, we know ferries have been plagued with delays. What is BC Ferries doing to address this?
So BC Ferry says they are fully aware. They've told us this over and over again. We know that there are delays all the time. We know that there have been malfunctions. So they have actually put 95 extra sailings to address the long weekend. So up until Tuesday, these additional sailings will be coming out of all of their terminals in order to address the delays. But hey, you and me both, we can see the line behind me. I'm still going to say come early, be prepared to wait. That's just the way it's going to be this long weekend, and it's no surprise. Leanne.
Good advice. Thank you so much for that, Zara. Zara Premji reporting live from the Tsawwassen Ferry Terminal. And as Zara mentioned, if you're planning a long weekend road trip, you're not in the clear either. The Patello Bridge will be closed northbound into New Westminster this weekend. Crews are replacing the Royal Avenue overpass bridge deck, so drivers should expect closures between McBride Boulevard and the Royal Avenue on-ramp. But the bridge will stay open to people on foot or going by bike and first responders, of course. TransLink is reminding drivers in the area to plan for up to 30 minutes of additional travel time. Wildfire crews continue to secure areas at risk in Stoddard Creek. The firefighters are using chainsaws, hand tools, and water to reduce the fire perimeter.
The crews are cutting a trail as tight to the block as they can, and then they're hosing out behind that cut and basically doing a good 5 foot along the edge just to make sure that this fire doesn't advance over the next few hours. And then the goal is to get a little bit thicker of an edge put on later.
Smoke continues to cause poor air quality and reduced visibility. The Air Quality Health Index in Fort St. John is above a 10, and a high percentage of harmful particles in the air means extreme risk for people there and in surrounding areas. Environment Canada is warning people to avoid strenuous activities outdoors and to wear N95 masks as a protection measure. Here's a look at the scene driving into Fort St. John.
So this is driving down the road to my home, and you can see how ridiculously smoky it is. And it smells like a weenie roast outside, like hardcore campfire.
Environment Canada says there is a chance of thunderstorms in the southern interior this weekend, raising the risk of lightning-caused wildfires. It's already been a busy wildfire season, and over the last few days, some BC residents have been given evacuation alerts. But what does that mean exactly? Our Maurice Katz tells us the difference between evac alerts and orders and breaks down what you should do in each situation.
Wildfire season has started in BC, and if you've seen our news coverage, you may have heard terms like evacuation alert or evacuation order. But what do these terms really mean?
An evacuation alert is when folks need to be ready to leave on short notice. If you don't have one already, it's great to have a to-go bag ready to go that can contain medications, identification, if you have pets, food for them, food for yourself, and for an entire list as to what is best to be in those bags, I recommend visiting Preparedness BC, and they have a lot of great resources. An evacuation order is when you are at immediate risk, and we are asking folks to leave the area immediately.
But if you're in that situation, what should you do? According to the province, if it's an evacuation alert, they say to move patio furniture, cushions, and doormats indoors, and to take down flammable curtains. They also say to fill large containers like pools, hot tubs, and garbage cans with water to help slow down the fire, and to disconnect automatic garage door openers in case you lose power. But if it's an evacuation order, close your doors and windows and turn on your lights so your home is visible to firefighters in heavy smoke. Then follow all official directions and evacuate using the route they've identified.
Some useful information there. Now, Johanna Wagstaff is off tonight, but Riley Lachek is here with weather. A bit of a nerve-wracking week for some folks in parts of this province. So how's it looking for the long weekend, Riley?
Well, we were certainly looking at some much-needed rain in parts of the province as we head into the later part of the weekend. In terms of fire danger, still very high and extreme, really right across Western Canada. We're seeing quite a few fires burning in parts of northern British Columbia through northern Alberta and Saskatchewan. We do have an air quality statement in place for the Williams Lake, Prince George, up through the Peace region and Fort Nelson. Expecting air quality to be an issue for the next 24 to 48 hours at least. And we have a severe thunderstorm watch in effect as well. This is for the boundary region of Soyuz over toward Fort Nelson. We're expecting to see some thunderstorm activity potentially through the night tonight in southern parts of British Columbia. Not a lot to see on satellite radar right now, just a mainly clear sky. We're going to see our clouds building in as we get into the night tonight, and by the time we get to Saturday morning, mainly cloudy skies, sun cloud mix through much of the day. But I stopped here Saturday evening. We do have the potential for some more thunderstorm activity through the southern part of the interior as we get into Sunday. When we get into Sunday, we do see some rain for northern parts of British Columbia, some much needed rain that will hopefully put a dent in the firefight through parts of the province into the early part of next week. Southern part British Columbia tonight, temperatures 12 to 16 degrees, mainly cloudy skies. We'll see our clouds building in tonight. Into the northern part of the province, much the same. mainly cloudy, getting into the single digits through Haida Gwaii, Prince Rupert up to Dease Lake. Tomorrow, nice warm temperatures, 26 in Fort St. John, where we have those air quality statements in place, 27 for Williams Lake tomorrow under a mix of sun and cloud, and really a mix of sun and cloud through most of the south tomorrow, even into the 30s for parts of the interior as we get into the afternoon. Soyuz, Kelowna, seeing that risk of thunderstorms. As for Metro Vancouver, your long range looks like this: 23 for Saturday, 18 for Sunday, 17 degrees for Monday, and really we're in this dry pattern for the end of the work week as well, and potentially some rain coming next Friday.
All right, thanks for that, Riley. The trial of Ibrahim Ali is expected to go well past its original scheduled end date. Ali is accused of killing a Burnaby teenager in Central Park back in 2017. Several delays meant the jury was sent home early twice this week. Our John Hernandez has been following the trial and has this update. And a warning, some of the details of the story describe violence and assault.
It was an anticlimactic end to what had been a pivotal week in the Ibrahim Ali trial. Ali is charged with first-degree murder of a 13-year-old girl whose body was found in Burnaby Central Park in July 2017. Her name is protected by a publication ban. This week, the jury spent 3 days hearing testimony from the doctor who performed the autopsy on the victim, but that came to a quick halt on Thursday morning. The jury briefly entered the courtroom before the judge told them that Ali was, quote, not well, and they were sent home again this morning without ever setting foot in court. These delays have been piling up. The Crown's opening statement had been pushed back a month since the original start date of the trial, and just this week, Justice Lance Bernard told the jury that the trial's expected end date of June 30th was no longer realistic and that the trial could push into September and beyond. He's since received letters from various jurors regarding availability, but said he's confident the trial will be able to continue. The trial is expected to pick back up on Tuesday with further testimony from Dr. Jason Morin, who studied the 13-year-old victim's body. This week, he outlined the various injuries he observed on her, and a warning, some details here might be disturbing. Among his major findings were what's called petechial hemorrhages on the young girl's face. Those are essentially small burst blood vessels. He told the jury he was certain the victim was strangled to death. The Crown's argument is that the young girl was passing through Burnaby Central Park on July 18th, 2017, when she was attacked and dragged into the woods before she was sexually assaulted and strangled to death. Dr. Morin also described injuries to the victim the Crown is expected to reference as it makes the case the victim was sexually assaulted. Morin said he also recovered DNA that was sent away for processing. The Crown says Ali's DNA was recovered from the scene. Prosecutors are expected to call witnesses who will testify on more forensic evidence next week. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
A makeshift residential school memorial at Vancouver Art Gallery has been removed. The city had planned to dismantle the display of shoes, candles, and toys on the steps of the art gallery today. But when staff showed up this morning, the majority of the items had already been removed. They had been sent to an undisclosed location by First Nations volunteers connected to the memorial. The city says this was not a part of the process agreed upon with the organizers and artists. The Supreme Court of Canada has dismissed a defamation suit filed by a former Chilliwack School Board trustee. He claimed that a former teachers' union president made comments that harmed his reputation. In a 2017 Facebook post, Barry Neufeld made comments supporting what he called, quote, traditional family values and denouncing diverse gender identity. Glenn Hansman described these comments as bigoted, transphobic, and hateful, to which Neufeld responded with a lawsuit, alleging that the backlash harmed his public image. Today, 6 of 7 justices agreed that protecting Hansman's speech outweighed remedying any harm to Neufeld's reputation. Students on SFU's Burnaby campus now have a better chance of living on campus after today's opening of its courtyard residence.
Through this project, you've said yes to accessibility, you've said yes to affordability, and most importantly, you've said yes to meeting the student needs.
The 2-story building will house 369 students, primarily for first-year students. And today's opening brings the number of student beds on the Burnaby campus to over 2,000. SFU is aiming to increase its capacity to house more than 3,200 students by 2035, something they say is important for student morale.
It makes a difference to be able to find a place to live and to live and learn in the same location. It eliminates commute times. It eliminates the worry about where you're going to live while you go to school. And you get to be in community.
It costs almost $4,000 per term to live in the Courtyard residence and an additional $3,000 for a meal membership, making it one of the most expensive undergraduate buildings on campus. And while more than 25,000 undergrad students attend SFU, only about 2,000 live on campus. Well, yesterday we introduced you to some business owners on the downtown Eastside who were having a tough go. They say the removal of tents in the areas has not made things any easier. Today, we bring you part 2 of my report. We hear from experts on why problems persist and what changes are needed now.
We're just waiting for a Zoom interview with Dr. Perry Kendall. He is the former provincial health officer here in BC. So he's in Victoria now, he's retired. And we're going to talk to him because, you know, the problems on the downtown east side are increasing. I think everyone would agree on that. But he was there back in 2000 when the City of Vancouver implemented this groundbreaking 4 pillars drug strategy, which included harm reduction. And there's been some criticism, of course, because with those problems increasing. So we want to ask him if he feels like the policy has lived up to its potential and maybe why not.
Recording in progress.
You know, I wanted to first off get from you, how do you think we're doing in terms of meeting the challenges of the people on the downtown east side?
The number of homeless people on the streets is increasing. The number of people with serious mental illness on top of substance abuse issues is increasing. And the area in which people are living has actually decreased. Gentrification has been gradually encroaching on the downtown east side, the affordable blocks, over the past 20 years as well. So what you have is a larger population of homeless people, more of whom have concurrent disorders, and fewer of whom have a place to actually live inside.
So in your opinion then, what is it that we need to do now? What do governments need to focus on in order to help the business owners who are affected by the many issues plaguing the people living on the downtown east side?
There is no quick, simple, easy fix, okay? Anybody who thinks there is, basically, you know, blowing smoke out of their ass, to be honest and crude. So there's no quick, easy fix. But in the background, we need to ask, can you think of any other policy that is killing British Columbians at the rate of 2,300 a year, right? Which is what our Controlled Drugs and Substances Act and our criminalization of certain drugs does. So we need to have a discussion around, is this really a sane policy or not? I think we should move to a regulated supply, but that's a big political leap. And let's increase our access to mental health care and primary health care. But that's not going to happen overnight either.
Everyone's looking for solutions, and we're about to talk to Kevin Barlow. He's the executive director of the Hastings Cross Business Improvement Association, which basically oversees the entire East Hastings strip, as well as the 1 or 2 blocks north and south of it, including Linda's business and Ross's business. And he's pushing for solutions now. He's been working with vulnerable populations his entire career, so let's go have a chat. And so as the guy who's trying to advocate for essentially probably the toughest business neighborhood in maybe all of North America, what do you tell policymakers? Like, what do these businesses need in order to try and actually, you know, cut it? It's tough out there.
Yeah, you know, I think one of the things we don't really understand is that even those people that are homeless are contributing to the local economy here. So they'll go into corner stores and buy cigarettes or coffee, that type of thing, you know. I really believe that tiny homes, and there's other alternatives like retrofitting buses, and you can put them into either a parkette, like close off a block, put a couple buses there, and then you can house 20 people. They're away from buildings. I just think the city is not open enough to looking at those things because they're trying to create this smoke and mirrors where they're saying, okay, we've chased everybody out, now let's get back to normal.
In talking to the businesses here, you know, there are a lot of worries, there's a lot of fear, but at the same time, there's a lot of hope. People want to be in this community, they want to keep their doors open, and they want to see the community thrive. And the hope is that by speaking out, they'll be able to bring about change, not just for themselves, but for everyone here.
It was considered an engineering marvel, Mill Number 3 at the Britannia Mine Museum. Now, Canada's largest museum artifact is celebrating 100 years of its existence. CBC's Benit Brach went for a visit and brings us this glimpse of the past.
On the edge of BC's Sea to Sky Highway, there's no escaping this mammoth building wedged into a mountain.
There's a lot of history here, 100 years of it. This giant space was once the largest copper mine in the British Empire, and we're about to see some very unique spaces.
Hundreds of steep stairs lead to different floors, and these giant machines would crush up the mined ore with copper inside.
So you can imagine the noise that was inside that thing. It would be just like a big drum.
Marshall started at the mine when he was 18, working underground in a mountain riddled with tunnels and later as a safety officer.
Lots of heavy manual labor.
For many, mining was a labor of love, literally.
I met my wife here. She was a receptionist in the office.
The mill was a key part of the mine and industrial revolution.
As copper was becoming in high demand for bringing power to all these different machines and things around the world.
And with the mill wedged into a cliff, gravity did its part, moving the mined ore down each floor of the mill, and machines roared.
By the end of the processes here, we have a high concentrate of copper-rich powders, which can then be sent off to our smelters.
But everything shut down 50 years ago when copper prices dropped, leaving an empty town behind, an environmental disaster in its wake. Acid rock runoff impacted how sound for decades. But this place was more than copper. Workers lived primarily in two company towns, the Britannia beach site next to the mill, and Mount Cheer, where all the underground workers lived up on the mountain. People fell in love, had kids, went to school, played sports in the communities. Around 60,000 people from 50 countries worked at the mine over its life. Yip Bing was one of them, arriving in around 1913. He worked at the general store and also made Chinese food for the miners. The community eventually named him Dr. YB because his special herbal soup helped heal miners when they were sick.
He delivered it on a big wagon to different houses to feed people.
At the time, Chinese workers didn't have the same rights as other workers because of discriminatory government laws, so their jobs were often limited to cooks or working above ground.
To find out how special, or what his legacy that he left at Britannia Beach, that was pretty emotional for us.
Decades later, this mill still stands, a reminder of a once thriving hub. The new exhibit commenting its history and impact will run until late next year. Benit Brach, CBC News, Britannia.
That's a cool story from Benit. As we head into a summer of vacations and road trips, one small community in the interior of BC is rolling out a unique pilot project this weekend. As Jennifer Norwell explains, it involves chauffeuring around your dog.
Entrepreneur Anne-Marie Fleming has an idea that she thinks tourists are going to lap up.
I think tourism needs to be a little creative these days.
She's been working with the district of 100 Mile House on a unique project, offering her dog strollers, or doggers, for free to visitors. Some dogs struggle on longer walks, but the community wanted to be accessible.
100 Mile House is a super friendly, very dog-friendly town. I don't know that there's too many people in our entire South Caribou that don't own pets.
She sees this as a way to grow the town's economy and draw in dog owners.
It's really been a big benefit for us, all of us. Four-legged and two-legged.
Grieve and her dog Ellie have been using the dogger for 6 years. That means they get out of the house more often.
If you're wondering how to use the dog stroller, simple. Just pick the dog up, put the dog in the stroller, clip him in. The only thing, there's a 60-pound limit. Plus, you can cover them up if it's hot.
It's a free service like a dog stroller that might entice Stephanie Worley to hit the road to 100 Mile from her home in Kamloops.
You live for your dog, really.
She worries 16-year-old Chevy doesn't know the limits of his aging bones.
And everything you do is a focus around them, you know, like especially when you're traveling.
Come here. Oh!
This tourism expert sees the potential in pitching to pooch owners.
It's a great idea and something that kind of signifies
that they're a dog-friendly place. The statistics we see on consumer behavior around pet spending are all increasing significantly and have gone way up since the pandemic.
That's what Fleming hopes happens, so that others can enjoy taking their dogs on chauffeured tours of the caribou.
I could honestly see that people will plan their trip if we could say you get the option of taking a dog stroller from visitor centers, in 4 or 5 places along the highway, that they plan their trips that way.
Her hope, to see doggers at tourist stops across BC, so that people can plan their travels around their pups. Jennifer Norwell, CBC News, 100 Mile House.
And for those of us who don't have dogs, it's always just fun to see dogs in strollers. That was a great story. Thanks for that, Jen Norwell. All right, that's it for us tonight. Thank you so much. You can always find our news program online at cbc.ca/BC. Our next local news is right here at 11 o'clock after the National with Janella Hamilton tonight. Have a great long weekend. See you.